Welcome, everyone. Happy Thursday. This is the Engage Thursday webinar. My name is Trina Shanks. I'm a professor at the School of Social Work and Director of Community Engagement for the school. Just to give one quick accessibility note, if you want to see this in closed captioning, select the CC at the bottom of your screen. And if you want to just see the speaker, click on the speaker view in the right-hand corner. And this is meant to be an interactive conversation. So please put any questions in the chat, and our facilitator will unmute you once we get into the Q&A portion so you can ask your question. But if you put up the PowerPoint, Fatima, I'd like to introduce the Engage team. Is this racial? Okay. Is this the right PowerPoint? Oh, okay. Next slide. This is the Engage team. So again, my name is Trina Shanks. My wonderful team includes Sonia Harb, Aisha Ghazi Edwin, Fatima Salman, and our two interns, Jamie Simmons and Blake Newman. And so I appreciate all the work they do to make this possible. I'm gonna turn it over to Leah for a second to talk about getting continuing education credits. And then I'll introduce our speakers for today. So today's topic is food justice and environmental justice. It's part of a long-standing battle in the fight against racial inequity. And so today we have three wonderful Detroit activists who took food sovereignty into their communities, into their own hands, and have been working for a long time to bring food justice to the city of Detroit and the surrounding area. So it's my honor to welcome Malik Yakini. He is the executive director of the Detroit Black Food Security Network, and you'll get to learn about the great work they've been doing. I also am pleased to welcome Michelle Jackson. She's executive director of Sustainable Community Farms, and we look forward to what she has to say about her work. And then last but not least, we will hear from Jerriann Hebron, and she's executive director of the Oakland Avenue Urban Farming and Northend Christian Community Development Incorporated, the CDC in Detroit. So now I'm gonna pass it over to our moderator, Aisha Ghazi, from the Engage team, who will start off this panel.
Thanks, Trina. Hi, everyone. We're so excited to have these special guests on with us. I've heard about Malik, Michelle, and Jerry's work in Detroit for years. And, you know, food justice and environmental justice is an issue that really plagues Detroit. And we're going to talk a little bit about why. But first, I want to give our three panelists the chance to each maybe take 5 minutes, introduce yourself, talk about why you do this work. And if you could also maybe touch on why in Detroit. Why do you think this work really works and is needed in Detroit? So why don't we go ahead and start with Malik first?
Greetings. It's a pleasure to be here. So evidently I'm a medium brown skinned person, according to the image description. Jerry and I guess, are medium brown skin, and Michelle is a dark skinned brown person. So maybe I just want to start with that. I thought that was a little humorous. But it's a pleasure to be here. I'm executive director of the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network. We're a nonprofit organization that started in 2006. And we are dedicated to creating a food system that is just and equitable, particularly in terms of racial justice. And so our work is focused on Detroit's African-American community, on creating empowerment within that community, on creating community self-determination models where members of that community decide for ourselves what's in our best interest and put those plans into place, as opposed to groups from the outside kind of coming in and dictating to us what should happen in our communities. Specifically, we operate D-Town Farm, which is a 7-acre farm in Rouge Park. We've been operating in that location since 2008. We grow about 3 dozen different fruits, vegetables, and herbs there each year. In normal times, we do training programs where we train cohorts of new farmers each year. That was stifled because of COVID this year. And normally we have lots and lots of volunteers who also learn about urban farming by coming out working with us. We also have a youth program that we operate at 2 locations in Detroit called the Food Warriors Youth Development Program. We operate an after-school program during normal times at Barack Obama Leadership Academy on the east side of Detroit, which used to be known as Timbuktu Academy of Science and Technology. And we also operate at the Shrine of the Black Madonna on Linwood and Hogarth on the city's near west side. And so both of those programs are for young people between the ages of 5 and 12. They learn how to build and maintain raised bed gardens, learn how to harvest the foods and prepare them in healthy ways. And everything that we do is designed to give the children a better understanding of themselves as people of African descent. And so we function from an African-centered perspective. We always teach our children about African historical and cultural, African and African-American historical and cultural concepts, and how that relates to our struggle for food sovereignty. And then finally, we're working on building the Detroit Food Commons, a 34,000 square foot new building on the corner of Woodward and Euclid that will house the Detroit People's Food Co-op, a cooperatively owned grocery store that currently has about 1,100 member owners. And we're looking forward to beginning construction on that within the next few months and finally getting this project off the ground.
Thank you so much, Malik. And I really like how you stress, it sounds like your organization and the way you've been doing work for a long time is about really starting young and helping people realize that food sovereignty is part of their heritage, is part of African heritage. So we have a quick question that I want to address before we move forward. So Kisa Johnson has asked, do the panelists prefer to use the word food sovereignty or food justice in describing the work you do? I think terminology is important.
So is that to me or to any of us?
To any of you.
So I'll just speak on behalf of Oakland Avenue Urban Farm. I use the word food justice. Not that sovereignty isn't a part of this, but I look at the equity.
Right. That's a good point.
So I think it depends, and I'll speak for Sustainable Community Farms. This is Michelle Jackson. So I think it depends on how you're using it and when you're describing it and the contents. So food sovereignty does have to do with your heritage, but it also has to do with the rights of the people. And so it's more about, it's a broader range. And when you're speaking on food justice, you can pinpoint those particular issues right here, right now on the ground in our neighborhood. We don't necessarily have to go or branch outward. We see them every day right here on the ground.
Yeah, and I'll say that we use both terms. Certainly food justice is a good term to use and something that people can relate to. We also use food sovereignty. Now, I would say that food justice and food security are really included in the broader tent that is food sovereignty.
Like interchangeably. Well, thanks so much. So why don't we, Michelle, if you want to take a couple minutes, tell us who you are and the work you do.
So I am Michelle Jackson. I am born and raised on the east side of Detroit. Both of my parents come from the South. My father is from Yazoo, Mississippi, and my mother is from Bunn, North Carolina. And I was the only one actually born and raised here in the city of Detroit. We traveled back and forth in the summertime to North Carolina to the farm where my mother actually was raised. And so we got a chance to do a whole lot of things on the farm. The animals, food, being outdoors, and actually it wasn't considered work. When my mother was coming up, it was considered work for her. When we visit, it was considered fun for us because it wasn't something that we had to do. So I think that's where I got the love for it. However, in the city of Detroit, with some of the demolition taking place, we had environmental issues over here on the east side in our particular area. So really trying to see how we could take back our land or utilize the land to grow our own food and be healthier, mindful, and closer to the soil. And so basically, those are some of the things that we did in our area, Sustainable Community Farms. And our focus is basically the young people and our senior citizens. And so we definitely want to stay on the lines of generational.
That's great. Thank you so much, Michelle. So Jerry, do you want to go ahead?
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm Jerriann Hebron, Executive Director of the Oakland Avenue Urban Farm and Northend Christian Community Development. Our work started in 2008 when I was asked to come back to the North End to work at the nonprofit Northend Christian Community Development. It was at that time that in the food justice movement had been happening for close to, I think, 10 years at that time. And looking at this neighborhood in the North End, where there was a high percentage of vacant land and abandoned properties. There was no grocery stores, looking at where people bought their foods, gas station, liquor stores, you know, it was disheartening and frightening because of the high crime. And there was a disconnect in the community where people were not engaging with each other. So my job was to identify what was needed within the community. And so I did that by, actually just talking to people one-to-one, going door to door, asking people on the street, what was happening in the neighborhood and what are the things that the neighborhood needed. I was always told food, housing, and jobs is what was needed in this community. And so our organization had immediate access to 10 vacant lots along the Oakland Avenue corridor. And we began to invite people in and talk about what could potentially happen on these 10 contiguous lots on Oakland. And the community really got engaged. We had about 25 to 35 people that met every other week for 6 months, starting in the winter, to really talk about what could happen within these lots that would make a difference within this community. We tapped into some resources that Greening of Detroit had, and that began the process. We got technical assistance on how to do a garden, how to engage people, what types of foods we could plant, things like that. And we broke ground the following year in April and did not own anything, did not own the first lot, but it was important that we took control of this property for the benefit of the community, because the city at that particular time did not have resources to cut grass, keep property free of debris, etc. And people were kind of like waiting to say, when's the city going to do something? Our position was, we're not going to wait for the city. We're going to do it. This land belongs to the community. We're involved with it every day. So let's take control of it and do what we need to do. The garden was the first step in that. That garden built out in 2009 on a 20 by 20 plot, which is connected to those 10 lots, was the beginning of people seeing the potential in this neighborhood of what they can do, boots on the ground. People came together. They really supported our work. We built the farmers market in 2010. And today we are 6 acres. We have youth development programs. We have workforce development programs. Our farmers market celebrated 10 years this year during COVID. It was the best farmers market we have ever had. And we are, since December, became officially the Detroit Cultivator Community Land Trust. So all the properties that we have been placed inside of a land trust, because our goal is to stop speculative development and, you know, try to address gentrification within our neighborhood. We want to make sure that our properties are remaining under the control of people who live here. So I'll stop right there.
That's amazing. And you all are doing such amazing work. And I really, Jerry, I appreciate that you were touching upon kind of the food desert that exists in Detroit. And we all know that places that have been historically redlined, racially redlined, Black communities, they were built in a way where they're food deserts. There's not access to grocery stores. There's not access to places with nutritious food. And also they're overwhelmed with these environmental injustices. They'll have plants built behind neighborhoods. I want you each to maybe talk a little bit about how do you feel your work is now impacting your community, and what are you really excited about in terms of some of the initiatives you're doing?
May I start? This is Jerry again. I'm really excited about what I see happening in the North End. Again, we're located, our corporate office is located on a commercial street, the Oakland Avenue corridor, which was famous for having a huge number of Black owned businesses, mom and pop businesses, where everything that people needed within our community could be acquired on the corridor. Very few items were not accessible, causing people to go outside of the community. But, you know, during the 60s, when businesses left, corporations left, population left, the corridor became very decimated. And so for years, the corridor sat there, and there's been very little, there's been no investment at all within the community, within the corridor. And so we had very little options. We don't have any options for shopping and to meeting some of the needs, basic needs. Well, what's happening now is we have the Detroit People's Food Co-op coming to the neighborhood. A new ice cream dairy is in our neighborhood. We are building out a cooperative training center right on the corridor. And businesses are, you know, slowly starting to come to the corridor. So I'm really optimistic about the next 5 years of what's going to happen in our neighborhood. And we also have new housing, but we're with the new housing that is at market rate, we need to also see affordable housing. So that's what we're working on right now. So those are the things that I'm excited about.
That's great. How about anyone else? I mean, how have you seen your work really impact the community? And, you know, actually we have a comment from Atticus, and Atticus, I want, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself, if you can ask it. I think it's relevant to what we're talking about right now. Atticus says he's not sure how. I can read it out loud. So Atticus said, research shows that keeping the land of those vacant lots shows a lot of increase in community protective factors, like increase in neighborhood pride and lowered crime rates. Have you seen these protective factors? So essentially, I think Atticus, what you're saying, you know, correct me if I'm wrong. Actually, Atticus, you should be able to speak now if you want to jump in.
Oh yeah, so I'm hearing this with your increase in businesses coming to your community, Ms. Hebron. But So research shows that keeping of the land of these vacant lots that previously were overgrown shows a lot of increase in community protective factors like neighborhood pride and like lowering of crime rates. And I'm just wondering if you've seen these things happening in your neighborhoods since you've taken on this venture.
We absolutely, thank you for the question. And we absolutely have seen a decrease in crime. Safe passage was one of the concerns that we had because where we're located, we are 1 block south of an elementary school. And so for those kids to be able to walk safely to and from school, we needed to make sure that there was debris removal, that the grass was cut. I'm 5'2", and I could stand in the middle of a lot back in 2008, 2009, and you could not see the top of my head. So I was hidden down in the grass. That's a very dangerous situation for walking. Is a dangerous situation because there could be animals or anything, predators hiding in the grass. So us taking control of that has created safe passage for our children and our seniors. It also, building out these green spaces in our neighborhood has also created a place where people feel welcome. Because one of the things that we had in our neighborhood was we didn't have places where people within our communities could come together and come together in a space where they felt belonged to the neighborhood, was a part of the neighborhood, and that they felt safe. So they weren't going to be intimidated, asked to leave, anything like that. So yes, the answer is yes to your question. I will say that one of the concerns with our neighborhood cleanup and building out these spaces, we are seeing more of an interest of people moving into our neighborhood that don't look like the people who have lived here for a long time. And that's creating a little bit of a problem because prices are going up. Property values are going up. So it's a two-edged sword.
So I would like to mimic some of what Jerry is saying. So we live in an area and how I actually got started was some of the illegal dumping. And so when folks, the blighted folks moving out, when they were walking away from homes and, people going inside, stripping the homes and, then the houses burning up and then they becoming vacant lots. So we have an actual almost 2 city blocks that are almost bare. And we started in that particular area in 2008 on a 15 by 15. And we used some of the tires that came from being dumped. And so I can just tell you over the years, that was in 2008 when we started with, we got a generational grant to start in a larger area. And now we have wood chips. We don't have any fencing. We are looking to get fencing and we have almost a city block. It's still open. We grow, it's open. We have areas that we share and we don't share, but we also have the community around that watches out now for people who are looking to dump. They will come out and say, hey. And when I say come out, I mean, they come out from down the street because remember now we are on a city block where the whole block is just about empty. So we have 2 houses that sit on the corner across the street. And those 2 houses actually watch the farm now. Well, they watch as much as they can. And so even with stuff that we have compost out there that's big. We have stacks of wood chips. And so we don't mind people utilizing the resources when they come out to help, to volunteer, or if it's something they need. But by all means, we don't want anybody just coming, just getting the things. And so for one of the things is we have people that have started watching out now. They look And they don't let people come and destroy. They don't let people come and mess up. And if somebody is out there, they say, hey, you know, we have signs now, but at one point in time, we didn't have signs. So then people would also give my name and phone number for somebody if they needed something there. So, and now, like Jerry said, our seniors walk. You know, they can walk now because they can see. So it allows them to be able that even if they're walking by themselves, they can see, but others can also see them to where you couldn't see them before because of the dangerous houses, the blighted, the breaking up, the burning. And so, yes, just cutting. We have areas, we have lots over here where people do not own them, like Jerry said, but they take care of them now because it's like, it's an unspoken word almost, you know. Once you start, people see other stuff, then they add on. And so I'll say our block where I live at, the street I live on, we've had 10 vacant homes. All 10, well, not all 10, but 8 of the 10 sold this year during the pandemic. 8 of 10 sold on one street. So it says something to the area. So I'm excited about that. You wanted to know what was excited, what we were working on. So I'm excited about the newness coming to the area and just being able to connect my community to the land. It's
Thank you.
time for healing. Yeah.
Thank you, Michelle. Malik, do you want to add anything to that?
Sure. So I think the impact of Detroit Black Community Food Security Network has been that we planted seeds in the consciousness of people in our community, both about food policy, about urban agriculture, and about creating a circular economy as opposed to the kind of extractive economy that we see in our communities often, where other people own the businesses in the communities. Jerry spoke about this, but particularly in the food realm, in the grocery store realm, all the grocery stores in Detroit are owned by non-Detroiters, and they function on an extractive basis. Wealth is extracted from the majority Black communities. We don't see any circulation of that, and consequently, we don't see the kind of community health and resilience that comes when you have wealth circulating within your community. So we've been a strong voice in kind of pointing that out, and also in raising, in a totally unapologetic way, the issue of racial justice and the role that power plays in creating a fair and just food system. The things that I'm excited about, one, I'm excited about the fact that we hired a farm manager this year, Aziza Ford, and I no longer have to directly manage the farm. So I'm really happy about that on a personal level. And she's doing a wonderful job. And also I'm happy that our organization was able to endure all of the hardships and struggles that come from moving an organization from infancy to now moving to the second generation of leadership. A lot of groups don't make it that far. And so Aziza was not part of the founding group that founded DBCFSN. She's come several years later. And so the fact that we're able to now kind of pass the baton and she's holding that down is something I'm really excited about. And then also I'm excited about the Detroit Food Commons that I mentioned earlier and the Detroit People's Food Co-op. We've been working on this project for 10 years. In fact, a lot of people have begun to say, oh, I don't believe this is ever going to happen. And some people think it's a scam and we're just taking people's money. But the truth is we were naive when we first started. We thought we would have this done in 2 years. And we really didn't know all of the complexities that are involved in a project like this. This is about a $13 million project. And just putting the money together is a heck of an ordeal. But then there's all these other issues related to dealing with the city and permits and architects and construction and all of that. So, so we've seen this year, COVID has caused a lot of things to happen, as well as the murder of George Floyd and the protest around racial justice. So where we've been struggling to put together all of the financing for several years to make this thing happen, many funders seem to have shifted how they're looking at things during this COVID pandemic and as a result of the cries for racial justice. And so some of the funders that we've been talking to for years now seem to see the importance of supporting this project. And because our project is almost perfectly positioned as an example of racial justice, many of those foundations have put in large sums of money so that we have just about closed the funding gap. And again, we'll be ready to begin construction within the next few months. So I'm really excited about it.
That's awesome. And that actually touches on a question that I'm going to bring up from Eileen in a bit. But I want to circle back to something I think really important that Michelle said, and something that we talk about as social workers. There have been a lot of studies done and research on neighborhoods where they have opportunities to connect with each other and to get to know each other. They increase trust. They're more likely to engage in advocacy. They have better physical and mental health outcomes. And Michelle, when you talked about how you, and Jerry, when you talked about how you're really seeing those protective factors manifest, I'm not surprised, because it sounds like your work is really giving people power and giving people the power to form relationships.
Well, even in the way people look at their food, you know, I had a 15-year-old that came to me, and he started cooking because his mother could not cook. Well, not that she couldn't cook, but she just was cooking a lot of fried foods, a lot of stuff. He was having problems with his stomach. Went to the doctor, and the doctor, so he needed to come off of fried food. So it was a way that he had something in the background from coming to the farm, from being involved, and started adding some things. And he got other young men involved, and they started cooking at his house and stopped running the streets. And just, you know, so it gave them an opportunity to see something, to learn something. But then the young men got together and were able to come up with something themselves. I didn't tell them to go and cook. All I did was provide an area that gave them some resources, and they took it and ran with it. And so those are the stories that we like to see. Those are the stories that we like to capitalize on, but those are the stories that can't be measured to a funder. You know, you know, him coming back to me, letting me know that was heartfelt for me. That's priceless. That's priceless.
That's priceless. And I think it's a reminder. It shows people that, you know, having ownership over your own nutrition and food, that is independence. You're not dependent upon the grocery stores that you're lucky enough to have access to, or whatever is your environment. You know, you guys have been talking a lot about funders, so I want to ask a question that Kisa, actually, let's ask this question about what Kisa has said. This is not related to funders, but it is related to food and independence and what we're talking about. Kisa is asking, how does each panelist define and practice sustainability in your own lives and in your own work? How do you define it? How do you practice it?
I think I defined it by continuing connection, arm's length. So, and I'll just give a couple examples on that. Composting. We collect materials, food scraps. We do composting. A few years ago, had a young man here. He was 16 years old, learned how to compost. He's still composting today. He has a daughter. He's moved from Detroit. He's in Nashville, and we still connect on Facebook about him composting. To me, that's sustainable. That's something that's with him. I have a young lady when I was doing the greenhouse over at Osborne, which is a high school. Miracle was her name. Miracle was on the verge of being a slight borderline diabetic or diabetes or something like that. I don't know the term. But in learning how to prepare raw juices, because I introduced them to the raw juicing, she started doing that. Her and her mother did a garden in the backyard for 2 years. She's now expecting her first child. And we talk about how she has taken the salt out of her diet, and how she is more mindful of what she's eating, because she's eating for two now, and she already know what her health issues are prior to. So she doesn't have a whole solution, but she has resources, and she has little kibits to go in her bucket to help her over the long run. So for me, that's sustainable. That's sustainable. For me to go back out to the land and see something growing from a seed that was there from the year before that I can use, that's sustainable. For me to take some wood or some metal from somewhere that somebody threw out and I can bring to where I'm at and we can utilize it, that's sustainable.
Mhm.
So anything that I can make last longer, arm's length, continue on, for me, that's sustainable.
I love that. And it's also about passing ideas and the seed of ideas onto other people as well.
And this is Jerry. I actually agree with Michelle that the investment in human capital is sustainable. We work a lot with young people as well, just like Michelle, and we also work with returning citizens. And one of our biggest successes, I think, was being able to look at all of the gaps to employment that returning citizens have, or even just a lot of people in our community. They have so many gaps to traditional employment. So where we're able to take the no that a lot of people were getting and turn that into a yes, and said, we will invest time in training you, using agriculture as a base for workforce development, and then building those soft skills so that now people can go out into the workforce and be able to enter the traditional job cycle for employment is sustainable for us. That's it's the investment in human capital. We're also, I also believe that what is sustainable for us is when we started this work 11 years ago, we didn't have a penny. I couldn't find a penny.
I think that's all of us, huh, Jerry?
Right. Right. And talking to a funder, I had nothing, nothing to base it on other than our passion. And so we did this work for 6 years before the first funder looked at us.
Wow.
And so human capital,
yeah,
and our passion got us to that level. And so you can do this work with or without. It's harder sometimes, but yeah, sustainable has different paths for different groups, different people, different work. And I can tell you, for 6 years, we were out here making it happen, and that was sustainable for us.
I think we've always, and I'll let you go, Malik, but I think we've always, as our culture, been able to take nothing and make something, and been able to endure the long haul, Jerry. So I think that comes from our roots. And I'm sorry, Malik, go ahead. I just wanted to put that in there.
No problem. We're having a conversation. So yeah, thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Jerry. And I can definitely relate to what you're saying, because we also started with no funding and with just zeal. And although we're doing this like $13 million project, don't get it twisted, because Jerry can testify that just a few months ago I had to come to her and say, hey, can you loan us some money so we can stay afloat, because we were in a really precarious position. So it's not like it was so long ago that we were struggling to put a few pennies together. That happens periodically. So right now, cash seems to be flowing, and we'll pray that it stays like that. But I think there's three areas that I want to highlight in terms of sustainability, and I agree with Michelle that basically sustainability is the ability to continue doing something for the long term. And we know that that's in contrast to the current system of kind of industrial farming that we see that is not sustainable because it's destroying the topsoil. And so, it's destroying topsoil at the rate more than 10 times as fast as the earth can naturally reproduce it. And so that clearly is unsustainable. If we continue using those methods, then coming generations won't be able to have topsoil to farm. So, sustainable would be those practices that continue us to do, allow us to continue to do it for the long term. But I would take it even a step further and say that we strive to use what we call regenerative practices. That not only are we striving to not do harm to the earth, but we're trying to, in fact, we are building new topsoil. And I know both of the other farms here are doing that as well. So we're not just not destroying current topsoil through composting, we're building new topsoil and regenerating the earth. The other aspect of sustainability is in our movement itself. And all of us work with young people because we understand that it can't just be all people who are in their, I won't name ages. I'll just say myself. I say I'm in my 60s. I think the other two sisters are younger than me, but we need young people. We need people who are, below the age of 20 who really are on fire about this work in order for the movement and our organizations to be sustainable. And then finally, when people talk about sustainability in agriculture, a lot of times they're talking about the economics to sustainability. And I want to say with no uncertainty that all agriculture in the United States is subsidized. So a lot of times, we hear questions from funders about, well, if we give you this grant, is your farm going to be sustainable, right? Are you going to be able to continue without the grants? Well, people that have farms that are thousands of acres large are getting federal subsidies to be able to continue. So it's unfair to expect that an urban farm, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 acres large, is going to be able to be economically independent and sustainable when these huge operations can't. And so I just always like to push back and just, state that all agriculture in the United States is subsidized, and agriculture, urban agriculture, should be subsidized in the same way. We should be getting money from the federal government and from the state in order to build these localized, resilient food systems.
Yeah, absolutely. Urban agriculture needs to be subsidized, especially because the way that, especially the city of Detroit has been created, I mean, it was strategic through policy, right? And I want to touch on that because we have some questions in the chat that relate to how is food justice related to other forms, other systems of oppression. I want to, there's a question in the chat about how this issue may relate to the overassessment of property values that Wayne County Department of Treasury did back in 2008 and 2009 specifically, which led to mass foreclosures, empty lots in neighborhoods. So Gabrielle, I'm going to go ahead. It's Gabrielle George, and unmute you. And why don't you go ahead and ask your question of the speakers? Gabrielle, are you able to unmute yourself, or I can go ahead and ask it?
She said she's not sure how to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what happened the last time, maybe you need to unmute them first or something.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hi, I think unmuted you. You're in.
Go ahead, Gabrielle.
Hello. Oh, got it. Yeah, hi. Well, I'm actually in an organization at the U of M called the Detroit Partnership, and we have great meetings on different topics. And I actually got to volunteer over the summer at Hope Village Revitalization at the urban farm and the community garden and the farmers market. So I love all of this stuff. It's been great to hear all of this. but yesterday we were talking about affordable housing and about, all of it starting in 2008 and 9. And a lot of the panelists had talked about that, like all this blight and overgrown areas. And one thing we were talking about and mentioned yesterday was it all started with this, like in 2008 and 9, everything with the recession, but the taxes and property taxes in Detroit like still stays super high. And obviously that's not great for anyone, including in the city. So can you if anyone could talk kind of about that and how that relates to all the work that you're doing right now and the need for it, with housing or just food justice, food sovereignty, everything like that, that would be great.
Okay, I'm not really sure how to answer the question, but what I will say is I am a former real estate broker. So prior to, I closed my office in 2008. So prior to that, I was very much involved in the housing crisis, the mortgage debacle. I will say that as a realtor, we saw a problem in 2007, but didn't know what it was. We didn't know what was going on. What was happening was it was taking longer for people to get approved for mortgages. It was taking longer for appraisals to happen. We couldn't find the value, and the property taxes were higher in Detroit than in other areas, which contributed to the fact that people were having trouble getting approved for mortgages. But I have to also say that what we also notice is that subprime lending was a predator on the housing market, which contributed to a huge part of the mortgage crisis. And the subprime lending was targeted to people of color. So, it was a product targeting people of color. So for example, FICO score is your credit score. And what we saw was that it particularly in Detroit, we had buyers with a 700 FICO score, which is very good, right? They were put into a subprime mortgage package as opposed to a conventional bank package, which gave them oftentimes a higher interest rate, and it created a financial backlog because the percentages were so out of line with the mortgage, with the property value and the mortgage rate. So that was a contributing factor to the mortgage crisis and the housing crisis, which created the foreclosures back in 2008.
And then I remember, oh, sorry, go ahead, Michelle.
No, I was just gonna ditto what Jerry said. For our particular area, we had a number of individuals who lived in the area, but also owned property in the area. So it started to have some little rough edges with the community because you had people who own property that were still getting rent. So you living right across the street and you're collecting rent from people across the street, but you don't even own the house. You don't own the house. So when the people find out, it causes chaos in the community as a whole, not just between those two individuals, but between the community, because now somebody has been misled. Somebody has taken their money or stole their money, because if you don't own a house anymore, why are you still collecting rent? So instead of one individual being harmed, you have two families being harmed. And then when you decide to leave, you leave, and then you don't take care of any of the other properties that you have. So it's a ripple effect amongst the community, even when the community is close knit, or even when the community is trying. It's only so much you can do when the city has policies in place that protect certain people. And so, like I think Jerry said, it's a double-edged sword. Right now, what we see is the double-edged sword. We have a number of people that are about to be evicted, a number of families that are about to be evicted, or they've even been evicted. But during the pandemic, there also was something that was put in place. I'm not sure, but it was something put in place for people to get assistance to pay the rent if they filled out the paperwork. Well, right now we have a slew load of things that are going on because people didn't fill out the paperwork. Maybe they didn't know how, maybe something else was going on where they just didn't get it. But you also have those homeowners that need the money, that investment property, that they need their money too, because we don't know how they live and we don't know what they need. So, how do we come to a medium when we have the people that are put in place that's supposed to take care of these things, or supposed to be the watchdogs, or supposed to be the checks and balances, don't. So when the accountability is there, then do we actually look at privilege? Because
Yeah.
we know when we walk into places, when we gonna get something and when we're not.
Right. And, I know, when talking about subprime mortgages, how it inflated the mortgage market, how the history of redlining is so connected to why the city experienced massive foreclosures during the recession. I mean, it was the reason in part. And then how now you see neighborhoods that have really said, you know what, the property value may be decreasing because the city has foreclosed these houses or they're in the middle of bulldozing them. Let's turn this vacant lot into a farm. Let's bring some animals into it, and how it has brought the community together.
It's brought the community together, but again, I have to call out that the people who have been holding down the city for years, those of us who have been here, have created a pathway for gentrification.
Oh, right, 100%.
Okay, that's the other side of this. And so we have to somehow back that up. And that's the work, that's the constant work that we're doing within our community, saying, wait a minute, no to gentrifiers, right? So, we got to back that up. People have to hold on to their properties. People have to manage their properties, but people also have, so all of the folks, just like Michelle, people are buying property in the North End, left and right, with oftentimes without an appraisal to substantiate the value of the property, right? But they're not people of color.
Right.
And so we have to somehow create a pathway for people of color to move into these neighborhoods as well. There was an article, I think it was this year, about the number of mortgages being granted or approved for Blacks and compared to white people. And that percentage is very low for people of color. I don't remember the exact percentage rates, but it's very, very low. So if you cannot get a mortgage and you do not have the cash on hand,
right,
how do you buy these properties?
Right. Yeah, gentrification, I think, is a huge part of this, of the food justice movement that needs to be called out. So I appreciate you calling that out. And this kind of relates to, I think, Christian Smith. If we can unmute you, Fatima, or Fatima, if you can please unmute him. He has a question that is related to this.
Hello, thank you all so much. This is really inspiring, but just to get quickly to my question, I'm just wondering how you respond to neighbors' attitudes about farming, especially as they scale up with fruit trees, livestock, or hoop houses. But as we're talking about property values too, I'm just curious how you respond to neighbors' concerns about values going down or up, it sounds like, which to some people who are homeowners, they like values going up versus renters who don't like values going up. So there's like tensions, I feel like, between different types of folks. So I'm just curious how you respond to neighbors. And also I'll just piggyback Trina here in the chat too, just about cooperative structures, if that makes sense for this answer too.
So maybe I'll start this time, since I think my answer is probably the simplest. D-Town Farm is not located in the center of a neighborhood like Michelle's operation and Jerry's operation. We are located in a city-owned park, and so there is a residential neighborhood across the street from us. We're not surrounded by one. So we have a slightly different dynamic that we're working with. And also, our intent was never to be a neighborhood farm in the sense that Jerry and Michelle's operations are. We're more a citywide operation that happens to be located in a particular neighborhood. But given that, the overwhelming response we've gotten from neighbors near our farm has been positive. We had one negative response maybe 10 years ago when we put up a deer fence around the farm, and one of the neighbors across the street complained that she said it was impeding her view. We heard from her one time. We haven't heard any other complaints, but by and large, the feedback that we get from community members near the farm is very positive. We get a lot of attendance at our annual harvest festival by people who live in the neighborhood. We have a farm stand in normal times that we set up in front of the farm, and people from the neighborhood respond very positively to that. But again, our situation is a bit different than the other two sisters who are on the panel today.
So for me, our residents in the neighborhood, again, where we are basically in the middle of a city block that is just about vacant. So we have a couple of neighbors, a couple of home owners, folks around, and they have not displayed anything negative. And I do know that we are about to launch a community scale compost operation. And what we're planning to do is engage our residents and train our residents before we just start composting. So we've been composting all along, but it hasn't been on a larger scale. So now we are about to engage our residents so that they'll know that this is something that's beneficial. So we don't have any animals as of yet. I would love chickens and goats. I'm not gonna raise chickens and goats. I'm not gonna take care of them. So unless we get something that falls from the sky or somebody that comes and say, hey, we have these goats, we have these chickens, and we'll do it, we won't have them. So I want them, I do want them, but I also know it creates something for our neighbors. So unless I have somebody that can maintain and raise them the right way, the proper way, we won't have them. We'll just be growing. But we do have people who come to the farm, and we do environmental walks throughout the neighborhoods. And when we do that, residents come out and they engage with the folks. And so they know what we're doing on the property. They know where we are. And so we used to get negativity years ago. We don't anymore. So like maybe our first couple of years, folks were, complaining, but not anymore.
Thank you, Christian, for the question. Yes, we're in the neighborhood, and but as I said before, when we started our work with including the people who live in our neighborhood. They were very much so involved in the work that we do, the farm, planning the farm, building it out. The only negative comments we have had early on was about sharecropping. That was a big thing. Oh, you're sharecropping. And we're not going to be a part of that from some people. But that went away after I would say 1 year, when people saw how involved people were in the neighborhood, how beautifully maintained the property is, and how accessible it is to everybody. We've been very appreciative and blessed that people are not destroying the property. They don't leave their debris when they come and go. We have families that gather for picnics and things like that. We got people who walk through, or they come just to meditate at the property. So, and we do have chickens. We do not have a rooster. We thought maybe we would get some objections with the chickens, but what we found is that people always had chickens in the North End. And so the only thing they wanted to make sure of is that access to eggs would be available to everybody, and we do provide that.
I see that Trina, you asked a question in the chat about city policies, if you want to go ahead, and I think Malik has wrote some comments as well.
Just to kind of get this conversation going, because when you talk about what's residential, what's farming, are there zoning ordinances, or are there things the city can do policy-wise that'll make your work more helpful or allow it to grow faster than what you're able to do just on your own, buying residential lots one at a time? Just wondered how you can work with the city, or what you'd like the city to do that would be helpful as you guys move forward, particularly as you're getting more attention, you're growing bigger, and hopefully you're being more successful. You know, how can you partner with the city to keep the work going?
So I'll start, and I make this comment. It may be suicide in a way, because I'm getting ready to criticize the city at the same time that I'm going to the city trying to get money for this project that we're working on. But the reality is that the city has lagged behind in their understanding, to the extent that there are policies and ordinances in place that allow residents to obtain ownership or use of lots for agriculture. It's been the result of relentless work on the part of the people who are involved in farming. And we've been pulling the city along, kicking, screaming. And Catherine Underwood, who works for the City Planning Commission, fortunately has been in city government and has tried to help them get a clue. But the reality is that I know when our organization started in 2006, city officials basically had no clue about how urban agriculture or green spaces fit into the city plan. But you can't go to a city meeting now with city officials without hearing something about urban agriculture and green spaces. And I'm told that in presentations they do in other cities, they have pictures of some of our farms and things like that. But the reality is that they've come as a result of this push and pull on the part of those of us who are doing the work. And so there's been some progress, but there's still some things that need to be done. And one of the things that needs to be done is a path for ownership of land by Black farmers in the city of Detroit, small and Black farmers. And the reality is, in America, capitalism, class, and race all kind of intersect. And so, as in all aspects of life, we see that when Black folks enter into an arena, we have additional obstacles. And so we need clear, just, and transparent and equally applied ordinances that regulate how people obtain use of city-owned land for agricultural purposes. Still, there seems to be some variance depending on who you talk to, depending on who you are, depending on how much money you have, and things like that. The other thing is that some of us are paying tremendous water rates, and I know Jerry has been struggling with the water and sewage department about this, but we need across the board agricultural rates so that people who are doing farming are not charged at the same rate that people who are homeowners. And the reason that's important, because if you own a home and you have toilets and you have water that's running down the drain, you are putting water into the stormwater management system and justifiably should be charged a sewerage fee. But if you're operating a farm, which is a permeable surface, the reality is what you're doing is you're diverting water from the city stormwater management system. So not only should we not be paying for sewerage, which by the way is about 75% of somebody's water bill, but also we should be receiving a credit because we're actually causing the system to not have to work as hard. And so those are two of the things I think the city could do to move forward urban agriculture. But the other thing is that we always need access to capital, and it's going to require a shift on the part of how city leaders see development in the city, as opposed to seeing development as only being led by wealthy white men who have a lot of money. You know, that's the kind of current logic. We need paths forward that allow communities who don't have lots of money to obtain access to this capital so that we can determine what happens in our own neighborhoods, as opposed to wealthy people from the outside coming in and controlling all the development. And then we're supposed to be thankful because we can walk into the whatever the name of that arena is where the hockey team now plays. We can walk in there and spend our money, and this is supposed to be seen as progress. It's ridiculous.
That's great. Is there anyone else who wants to add in on that?
I forgot what the question was.
Trina, do you want to repeat the question?
Just ways the city can partner with you, maybe ordinances or policies that might be helpful to your work.
Oh, well, yeah, you know what? This is a good one for me. Malik is right about everything he said about them dragging their feet. Catherine Underwood actually being a pillar and speaking for us urban farmers and trying to educate the community, the city folks, and bring them along the way. But you know, it's like pulling teeth, and I'm talking about wisdom teeth, not the little front ones. I'm talking about those that's way in the back that they had to shoot you a couple of times, put you under, and you know, all of that. That's what it's been like. But one of the things we're working on right now, I mentioned it earlier, is that we focus on composting and educating our folks on how to collect food scraps and turn it into compost. So last year in November, we took a trip to Minneapolis and some city officials. First of all, let me back up. I co-chair a committee under Councilman Scott Benson, which is the Green Task Force. We have 7 committees and 2 subcommittees, and I co-chair with Renee Wallace the Organics Waste Committee, which, you know, food scrapping, that sort of thing. And so we went to Minneapolis last year. The city official came along, and so they got a chance to see some of the things that will help move along some of the things that our committees are working on as it relates to policy, energy, climate, mobility, so a number of different things. But I say that to say what we are working on right now, Georgia Street Collective, Wayne State, Breathe Free Detroit, we are working on the east side to connect health, equity, and compost, and to look at it to show the city that this is something that we need. We want to show that the practice that we could do it well. Our community folks can learn how to do it, that they can be educated to know the layers, how we use it. We are going to look at different bins that people can use on site. We're looking to have a drop-off site. So we are actually working over the next 2.5 years to show the city that we can do compost. There's a need to do compost. And here are some ways that, or some recommendation for policies around that.
And I would add, Michelle, there's an economic value to composting. And so in that discussion, I'm hoping that, you know, that's at the forefront, because I know for our farm, our budget is about $5,000 a year for compost. That is outside of Detroit. It's purchased outside of Detroit and brought in. So there's an economic value that, and we're trying to work with the city to get them to understand the need to have a community and commercial composting operation within the city of Detroit, and how it will also provide jobs for people who live here. So there is a lot of work to be done still in terms of zoning. The other thing about zoning, Trina, that's important is a lot of our work in these neighborhoods have changed. So we're talking about urban agriculture, but I'm sure, like with you, Michelle, with me being in community, Georgia Street Collective, Brightmoor, there are components to our work that is not just inclusive of vacant land, but we have structures. So for example, commercial kitchens, community houses and spaces. We just got, we're doing a project next year, Media Tech Library. So we will have a library in one of our structures. We need, that zoning is important for us to be able to bring these opportunities to our community. So we need the city to not be exclusive, but to look at us in an inclusive way, and the value that we are bringing to our communities with these different projects.
And you know what, Jerry, you are so right. And I guess when you're asked to speak about what you're doing, sometimes you speak about it, but you really don't capture everything. So like you talked about the kitchen. So we actually have some property where we are doing a community kitchen, but it's basically for the little folks, for folks who need a smaller kitchen, that might not have the money that the larger commercial kitchens so charges to use it. We have the space, we have access, and what we would like to do is put a roof on the building and maybe rent the upstairs, because it's a 2-family flat. So the commercial kitchen is just about built out downstairs, but we have 3 rooms upstairs that we could actually rent the rooms out for income, to generate income for the farm. And so, you know, just like Jerry said, we have structures, but again, so we need a roof on it. So, how do we go about, and the thing of it is, people believe in your work, they understand your work, and they want to support, but sometimes people just can't support. So, and the thing of it is, or either they can't support or they think they can't. So if I have a GoFundMe page, and that's what I do, I have a GoFundMe page right now, we're asking for $8,000 to put the roof on. People might not have money, but on Thursdays, we need to clean it out so that, we can clean the property out. So you don't necessarily have to give money, but you can come and help us to clean it out. You might not be able to help on a Thursday, but you might be able to come with 5 of your friends and help do something, or help maintain, help cut down, help pick up. So it's not always about money, even though, we do need money, but it's not always about money. It's some of the times it's how can you lend a hand, or how can you help, or how can you put together an event that will benefit us. So, we're open to all of that.
And that kind of brings me to my next question, and also a question by Daniel Dillard, who you can unmute yourself in a second, but what can we do to help all of you? and how do we get involved? And Daniel, if you want to unmute yourself and you can ask your question specifically related to this.
Sure. Hey, y'all. Thank you for this. So you kind of already touched on, well, actually, yeah, in these last conversations, you've really touched on my question, but I was curious specifically for folks who are really interested in connecting back with the land in this way, or interested in agriculture and community work like this, if there's opportunities to volunteer with y'all in terms of either like having trainings or, I mean, anything, you know, that's specific to the land and the farming aspect. Is that something that exists?
Yes, yes. We encourage volunteers at D-Town Farm. We're currently operating under some pretty strict COVID-19 protocols, but we can still have up to 15 volunteers at a time at our farm. And in normal times, we have, you know, maybe up to 40, 50 volunteers on some weekend days. And so people can learn about farming while volunteering with us. Also, we released a series of tutorial videos on YouTube this year on beginning farming, since we couldn't accommodate volunteers like we used to. And that's the way that people learn about farming. So what I encourage people to go to YouTube and look up Detroit Black Community Food Security Network, and you'll see a series of these tutorial videos that we produced.
And we'll send some of that information out as well afterward.
We also accept volunteers Monday through Saturday, 9 to 2. This is through December. We have strict COVID guidelines. You must wear masks, bring your own gloves, you know, and we ask all the COVID questions and take your temperature. And we have a lot of work to do. So that's always up. We welcome people. We did shut it off at the height of the pandemic. And then when June came, we opened it back up. I'm getting a little concerned about it now with the numbers going up, but until there's a real problem, we will welcome the volunteers still.
Michelle, do you?
Yes. So yeah, sorry about that. I was trying to unmute. So yes, we have volunteers every other Saturday. Not this Saturday. It's every other Saturday. We do have. I did put in the link, our sustainable Facebook page. We do events on that particular. I do post events, send out things. You can like us. You'll get the information. Did we give our email? Do they have our email, our contact info?
I'll be sending out like a follow-up email to all the participants that will include all this information. So if you want to drop your email, I can include your email in that.
Okay. And so, yeah, if anybody, you know, if it's something that they want to do, they want to bring a group out, they want to do an environmental walk, you know, it is COVID. We are definitely wearing masks. We had an event, a compost demonstration not too long ago. So with the numbers going up, we probably will be pumping our brakes. You know, we are outdoors. We have been able to do a little bit more because we have the space that has allowed us to do, but not at this time, just not really sure what is in what's going on. One of the things I think I would like to speak to the folks, the participants and the students. In just closing, I would just like to say to recognize your privilege. You know, the folks that are here, if I'm not mistaken, did you say they were social work students?
Yep, social work students and other people from the university.
And other people. So just know that if you are at U of M, that you already have escape some of what others won't. You're halfway. I mean, you know, education takes you out of a whole different realm of maybes, and it adds a whole bunch of possibilities. And so when you come up against somebody that might not speak like you, might not look like you, or might not use the same language as you, just recognize your privilege and try to be, just know it. Just know it. And that's basically all I want to say. Because a lot of times we don't think about what we have. We go from day to day. And a lot of times folks think that it's owed to them. But the folks that it was really owed to, it was taken from. So I'll leave that there.
That's so important. Thank you for stressing that. You know, I did miss a question. I apologize. Laura Sanders, do you want to unmute yourself and you can ask this question?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yep. We can hear you.
Okay. So thank you. Gosh, thank you so much for your amazing activism. This has been just great. I have a social worker sister who lives in Chicago, and she's also an actress. And she started a small community garden called Green Scene, where she has youth plant and grow, and then they perform around agricultural and social justice issues within the garden. And I was just wondering, have your efforts attracted local artists? And has there been any intersection between farming and the arts there?
So I'll speak for Oakland Avenue Urban Farm. We have a tremendous partnership with our local artists, musicians, and all of our cultural attributes that this people in this community bring. Prior to COVID, we got somewhere around 4,000 to 5,000 visitors a year, from folks all over the world coming to our farm. We've had a variety of different arts and cultural events in our space, and we work with the Michigan State Farm and their agriculture center, which is also a part of the 4-H club. So our kids get exposed to a lot of different events and activities, and they're working with a lot of different artists and musicians as well, which helps to broaden their learning and their exposure. And I like the fact that they're able to interact with people who come from other countries as well as around the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So we have, again, so when we do our environmental walks, if you want, you can look at our Facebook page. And what we have, we've done bricks, center block bricks. After we take the walks, the people sit down, they gather, and they design bricks. And so when the next group comes out, we build a wall with those bricks. And so we do have certain art pieces there. We also, when the young people come out from the schools that don't necessarily like to do urban ag, messing with the soil or planting, what one of the young folks started for us is that we have pallets. And so they paint the pallets. And so the pallets have been, when I say gorgeous, or like you could not believe that they did not use a stencil or that they did not use something to trace or something like that. And so what we try to do at the beginning of the summer is when the young folks come out, they paint them, and then we display them all summer long. By the end of the summer, they're gone. So, you know, like if I drive somewhere, I know somebody has picked up one of our pallets because I know what it looked like. But for the summer, the street does look beautiful, And when you drive down, we have them sometimes sitting up by the trees. So you get to see the different, and it's only wooden pallets, but the people get the young people paint them with however they want to. We just put the paint out and we let them go for what they do. And so we have different things that are pieces of artwork. And then for our bird classroom, we are looking to get a sculpture made to actually sit there to add to that particular area. So yes, we have not gotten in any touch with any singers or music, Baba Malik over there, maybe we can get him out one summer, get that guitar going, because he's pretty good. But, we haven't had any musical artists people or anything like that. So yeah. Yeah, Jerry, you like that, huh? Maybe he need to do a round robin. Okay.
Kisa, we have a question from you. I know we only have a few more minutes, but I want to give you a chance to ask it. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Oh, I was not planning on being. But here's my question, because I heard that you used the word food deserts, but I wanted to hear from the panelists their viewpoints about the difference between using the word food desert versus food apartheid in their work.
I per se, I don't use food desert. Food desert came about, if I'm not mistaken, the Bank LaSalle did some type of study some years ago. And you know how when funders are given money, or something becomes a buzzword and they use it and they keep using it and they keep using it and they keep using it. I don't use food desert because I don't like to use things that have negative terms. And so I don't think that, and I'll just say this, the way that I look at our city is that folks had people in place to provide a certain type of food as far as the supermarkets. So if I don't have a car and your market is what's in my area and that's close to me, then what I'm doing is allowing you to make judgment on what I can eat, even though I have the last choice on what I pick. If you go somewhere and what you bring back is not good when you get it, then how is it supposed to be good for me? So do those store owners, if you don't see the store owners shopping in their own stores, picking up their own meat, getting their own stuff, then why would you? And so that's one of the things that people don't pay attention to. And so we had a supermarket here that's in walking distance across the bridge from me. And it aggravated me every time I went in there because it smelled a certain way. He always had multiple things, 5 for $1, 10 for $5, and all of those with outdated stuff and all of that. And then they wanted to tell me, well, I can sell this as long as I display the date, meaning that if the date is outdated, I can still sell it. No, you cannot. However, what that does is that if I'm back and forth with you and we're angry and we're fussing, I'm fussing at you because it's not right, you're fussing at me because you need to make a living, the people who really need the food is going to lose out. Because I have a car, I can get to somewhere. I know that I don't want that type of food, so I can go somewhere and buy something else. But Miss J on the corner, she can't go anywhere else. That's the only place she can go. So which means that how do we work with those individual store owners to put the pressure on for accountability to make sure that the stuff that they have is what needs to be there? When I walk into your store, I shouldn't smell a nasty mop. If your mop is nasty, what does that say for people coming in? What does your area look like when I'm coming? Is it paper blown away, trash and all of that? If you're in the area, my area where I live at, then I need to say something to you for you to be accountable, but we need to work together. I don't need to always be fussing at you, and you don't always need to be, wondering if I'm going to say something. We need to figure out that medium on how we work together.
Yeah, quickly, I don't use the term food desert either, because it doesn't speak to the intentionality. People think of a desert as just being a naturally occurring ecosystem, but there's nothing natural that has occurred about the lack of high quality food in our community. It's been designed and engineered, and so the term food apartheid speaks to the intentionality of this. This is a system that was set up to create inequity, and it continues to do that very well. But whatever term we use, I don't argue with people who use the term food desert, because I understand what they mean by that. And so whatever term we use, the reality is the problem exists, whatever we call it. I think addressing the problem is more important than arguing about which term we use for it.
Jerry, do you want to add to that?
No, I agree with both Baba, Malik, and Michelle. I don't use the term food desert. I mean, there was a lot of food. It was just, what was it?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so we work with the Detroit Food Policy Council, who has done a remarkable job these last couple of years in going into the grocery stores, identifying ways that the grocery stores can improve what is being sold to the folks who live in our communities, calling out things like bad dates on the products and inferior meat and produce and things like that. But then we can also, advocate for others, like the Detroit Black Food Security Network, to do the People's Food Co-op and bring in, a better variety of options for folks that live in our community. And guess what? They look like the people who live in our community. So we could bring in that competition that we need and kind of drive out the folks that are providing substandard options to folks in our community. So we, there's ways that we can get around that.
Well, I want to thank you all so much. I think you all are amazing and inspiring, and I urge all of us to listen to what we learned today, which is learn about your privilege, learn about how history, created intentional systems of oppression. And we will send information out about these 3 amazing organizations and activists about how you can help out. So thank you again for joining us.
And can I just put in one plug, please, which I neglected to say anything about the Black Farmer Land Fund, which Oakland Avenue Urban Farm, D-Town Farm, and Keep Growing Detroit have been working on since I think June. We have an amazing effort to support Black farmers who are growing food in the Detroit community on land that they do not own. We are working with the Detroit Land Bank to work through that red tape to provide access to these farmers, and also security so that they can own the land that they are working, which ensures their ability, at least the opportunity for them to be successful and to continue to provide healthier food options for folks in our community. And I want to thank the people who have supported us, but I also wanted to invite others to continue to support us financially. You can make donations. We had over 60 applicants this year. 30 have been awarded, and coming 2021, we'll be back on the land front, providing opportunities for others.
That's amazing. And we're going to share some of that information. I'll get in touch with you, Jerry, so I make sure I have it right. And
Thank
we'll
you.
pass it out to all the participants.
Thank you.
Thank you again, everyone.